Hello, everyone joining this webinar. I am Stephen Okoyemi Aderintor, and I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Sheffield here in the United Kingdom. I'm happy to bring to you this session of the ChemVoices webinar, and we will discuss the topic science communication. I have here with me two amazing women in STEM who will be giving us their talks on the subject of science communication. The first speaker is Dr. Magaret from Malaysia, and the second speaker we have here is Dr. Lydia from France. And this webinar is being brought to you by the IYCN. IYCN, in brief, stands for the International Younger Chemist Network, and it is an associated organization of IUPAC since 2017. We have the vision to connect and empower young chemists globally, and our mission is to support and advocate for younger chemists working across the chemical sciences towards a globally sustainable future. You are welcome to be a part of our network, and if you are willing, you can sign up using the membership link displayed on the screen. And the basic eligibility requirement is that you must be under the age of 35 or be within 5 years of your most recent chemical degree. And we are also available on various social media platforms, including the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and the likes. And you are most welcome to follow us on the social media outlets. This webinar itself is being brought to you by ChemVoices, which is an IUPAC approved project, which is a sort of collaboration between the IUPAC itself and the IYCN. And the basic mission of the ChemVoices initiative is to sort of bring together early career chemists from across the globe to showcase their talent and impact within the chemical enterprise. And we host a monthly webinar featuring different speakers on various topics of interest to the younger chemist community. And we are available on YouTube. We have a series of webinars we've made in the past. You can always follow us on YouTube to have a listen of the various webinars. And I would like to briefly introduce to us the leadership of the ChemVoices initiative itself. Our chair is Dr. Laurie Ferrins, who is based at the Northwestern University in the US. We have other amazing leaders in the group, including Jiao, the president-elect, Bailey, Thursday, and a few other people who are making this webinar happen. And I would like to quickly hand over to Bianca, who will be introducing to us the webinar itself and also the speakers that we have brought on the platform. Very shortly, I will switch over to Bianca for her to introduce the subject of the day to us, and we can start the ball rolling very shortly. Kindly give me a minute.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again so much for joining us today for our webinar. We need to get started here. There we are. So our topic of today is science communication. And essentially, we are looking at what makes science communication important in today's society. How do we go about it? And how do we practically engage in it throughout our careers for increased impact of our science in society? So today we will have two individual presentations by two of our lovely speakers, who will talk to us a little bit about science communication and their research while in their position. And then subsequently, we will have a panel discussion based on some of the questions that we've received throughout the webinar. So essentially, what is science communication? And it is the practice of communicating science-related topics to non-experts. So essentially, in the field of STEM, science communication is usually made use of to extend our communication of our topics to those who are in the public, for example. However, many often use interchangeably for this, such as public engagement and outreach and so on and so forth, but they have slightly different emphases. And justice on this will be done by our two speakers. So our first speaker today will be Dr. Magaret Sivapragasam, who holds a PhD in bioprocess engineering, obtained at the University of Putra, Malaysia in 2014. Currently, she is a lecturer as well as head of department at Quest International University in Malaysia and is a biotechnologist by training. Recently, she has been honored with this title, Super Female by Female Magazine, and was selected as the top 45 women in Malaysia, 100 scientists of, oh gosh, this is being funny here. My apologies, everyone. And was placed on the periodic table of younger chemists in representing the element ytterbium. Passions include science communication, where she has published several articles in ACS Actual, the MDPI, the Petri Dish, and many others, and runs the Facebook group Sembang Science. She is currently an affiliate member of the Younger Scientists Network Academy of Science Malaysia, where she is a member of the Science Communication Working Group. Our second speaker for today is Dr. Lydia Sosa Vargas, who holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of East Anglia, UK, and was obtained in 2012. She is Mexican by birth, but has postdoctoral experience in Japan, as well now in France. Her research focuses on pi conjugated materials for applications in organic electronics, and she is a passionate science communicator. She started off during her PhD as an outreach ambassador for the RSC, and now is involved in organizing workshops for the local French Science Festival. She is also involved in IUPAC's Polymer Division in the Terminology and Education Subcommittee. She is also an advocate for women in science, and she is the organizer of the Paris edition of Global Women's Breakfast event since 2019, and is one of the coordinators of the Paris pod of 500 women scientists. I will now hand over to Dr. Magaret with her talk today.
Hello, hi, good evening. Can I get a confirmation if you could see my slides and hear me clearly, please?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
All right, thank you. So, hello and selamat datang from sunny and rainy Malaysia. Selamat datang translates to good evening. And if you would kindly take out your smartphones and scan the QR code right here, you could get all available avenues to reach me. I have my socials there, and also my LinkedIn, and also my research profile. And this picture right here shows the night view of pretty Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So just a little history before we begin. So I'm based in Quest International University in Malaysia. So those of you who have heard of Malaysia have heard of Kuala Lumpur being a very, very famous city in Malaysia. So where I work and where I live is 100 kilometers, about 110 miles from the north of Kuala Lumpur. And the state I'm actually working in is a relatively small place, Ipoh, which is only about 250 square miles with 615,000 people. So the city Ipoh is very well known for its cuisine and very pretty limestone hills. So just wanted to share this really pretty picture that I've taken from nearby my home. So as you can see on this pretty limestone hills, and many of these caves have been transformed into very pretty Buddhist and Hindu temples, yeah? coming back to the subject matter of today, I would like to begin with this quote that says, "Nothing in science has any value to society if it's not communicated." And scientists are beginning to learn their social obligations. So there's a reason I've highlighted the word obligations here, because I think that Anne was trying to make a very strong point when she said that. So I'm going to dig in a little bit deeper, and the word obligations, according to the Oxford Dictionary, allow me to read the exact definition, translates to the condition of being morally and legally bound to do something. So I don't know about you, but I take this to be an innate calling as a scientist or a person in science or a scientist in the making to perform my obligation, to spread and to help communicate my science to the world. So right, just some of the exact statistics before we begin. So what you see on my screen right now, this is data of Hootsuite as per July 2020. It has of course increased as per what we are seeing today. So as you see in the slides here, there are 3.96 billion number of social media users as per July 2020. But lo and behold, this number has 100% increased to what we have seen in the past year. And 19% of those populations are using mobile phones to access this social media sites. So what I gather from this slide here is you see a very high number of social media users on one end. And on the other hand, you see this at least 99% of these people using social media sites via their phone. So via their phone means that they would have information on the go. That's why we have our mobile devices, so we can access information on the go. So I look at this as a very good point, a very good avenue for us to do the science outreach or science communication in that way, or science, how to communicate your science, because you have so many people always holding on to their mobile phones and ever ready to access internet sites or access news, especially in this current pandemic that we're in. All right, so the second question that came to my mind was, what kind of content would you want to create? And who are your target audience? Another question that could come would be, why are you doing this, and why would you want to do this? And how much time are you willing to spend a day or week or month? Yeah. So still refresh all of you, which I'm sure all of you are very well informed about the types of platforms, social media platforms that we have nowadays. So we have multimedia social-based platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We have image-based social media platforms, which is Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and Flickr. You have video-based social media, which is YouTube and Vimeo and Reels. Of course, these are just some examples. It is not just it's not bound to the slides that I'm talking about. It is so many other examples that you can name. So the reason I'm here today is to share a little bit about how I started my journey on science communication. I'm not a science communicator, neither am I a science communications expert. I would like to say that I take science communication as a hobby. In fact, I feel, as what Anne said, I feel it's an innate calling. I feel it's a social obligation for us, since we have pursued, or some of you are pursuing your scientific degree or your PhDs or your masters or any level of your science degree that you're in right now. All the work that you do in the laboratory, all the studying that you do, all the hard work that you put in running your experiments and then washing your glassware and preparing your medium and whatnot, and you all know how difficult and tiring that can be. All that is actually boiled down to nothing if it's not communicated. Right? So we need to find an avenue or a medium. How are we going to transfer all that hard work, all that sweat and blood and hard work that we do in the laborious work that we do in the lab? How are we going to transpire? How are we going to transfer those information to everyone? How are we going to let everyone know about that? And that got me thinking. And four questions that I asked myself, which I presented earlier, that got me thinking, what am I going to do as a scientist to let everyone else know what I'm doing about? And I begin to realize that there's not one method that works for everyone. In fact, you should choose a method that suits you best. And if you keep on talking about it, and it's always just going to become talk, you need to start acting now. That's my thing, but just do it. Just start somewhere. And how are you going to get inspirations? Inspirations come from everywhere around you. You could just look everywhere and get inspirations of what you want to write or what you want to talk about. It could be through various means, like the different types of social media we just spoke about. It could be video-based, it could be writing-based. Some of you prefer podcasts, some of you prefer blogs. So there's many avenues that you could do or you could use. All right. So again, just sharing what had worked tremendously well for me was setting up a Facebook group. So I did a little bit of research, and again, this is not alien to many of you. Facebook is the biggest social media site around. And it has currently about 2 billion people listening every month. And that is almost a third of the world's population. Don't know about you, but that's a big number. So I'm trying to use all these figures to see how I can best tap into this value and get the most out of this. So what I and a few friends did over the past 1 year during the pandemic that hit Malaysia, we were all on a lockdown. And while we were on a lockdown, I think the most prominent or the most obvious thing everyone would do is everyone was glued to their phone, either to check what's happening in the other country, or to check how bad the pandemic was, or what is the current status of the vaccine. But it all boiled down to everyone was on their phone. Meaning, I could get everyone's attention if I'm going to put something on a social media site. So then I got a few friends together, and 4 of us come from various fields of expertise, various fields of research, and we came together to form this public group on Facebook called Sembang Science. Yeah, so Sembang in Bahasa Melayu, which is the national language of Malaysia, means to talk, or in a more fun way, it means chat. So Sembang translates to chat. So science, so when you put together, it usually means chat science or chat in science, to be grammatically correct. So the good thing about Facebook groups is that it has built-in analytics. So why I say built-in analytics is I managed to, or at least I or we were able to get the information on what kind of content was suitable to the demographic that I was targeting, or what kind of content gained the most likes or comments or shares. So initially, when we started off this group, we were trying to follow this analytics very closely to see what kind of content was society wanting, what kind of content was garnering or gathering shares. Yeah. Another one thing about Facebook groups is that you could have your group either in a private mode, you could have it in a public mode, or recently they came up with this new thing called a secret Facebook group. So apart from just posting, I could also create polls, I could do a buy and sell thing on the group, and I could even initiate a group chat. So, and also Facebook does give prompts or notifications to all its members when we have new posts to the group. So as I mentioned earlier, I would like to just give credit to these 3 wonderful ladies who have co-created this group with me. After much research, we found that it'd be best to gather different people from different varieties of the science spectrum. So I have physicists, I have a friend who's industrial chemist, and I had another colleague who's a registered chemist. So in another word, we could gather different content from different people from different fields and then create content which is more suitable to a larger audience. So yes, so today I just wanted to share that some of the posts that actually gathered very high insights on Facebook. And I'd like to just share one kind of the tips and tricks on what worked best for us. So here you would see 2 posts, one on your right, which is the shiitake mushrooms, and one of your left is a pretty silly picture of me being very happy with these ferns. So this is a very funny story. A few months ago, I went hiking in the rainforest, the beautiful rainforest of of Malaysia, and I came across this wild ferns. And little did I know that this wild ferns was actually an edible type of fern by the local people who live around the river banks. So what I did was I took it back and I went back to the resort that we were staying, and the chef actually cooked this delicacy out of these ferns. So what I did was I decided to write a story about it and put a really picture of me smelling those ferns because they smelled so wonderful and so tasty when it was cooked with chili paste. Yeah. So that the whole gist of me telling you the story is when you personalize posts, when you personalize research, you are kind of like humanizing science. Why I say this is because it becomes relatable. And this fern actually is something I would say people of lower income group consume this fern because it grows widely around riverbanks. So a lot of people were very fascinated by this post. And if you look at the comments and the post reach, it got a quite high post reach. And the comments were people sharing about various recipes on how they cook these ferns. They were telling me that, oh, back in their house in the States, they would cook this and they would do this in a certain way. So what we got to do here is we got to create engagement with our followers. And this also means we were creating a bond of friendship. We were creating a bond that as scientists are not scary people. And in fact, we can make things like this very interesting. And what I went on writing was about the nutrition value of this fern and how this fern has very high micronutrients, which I wrote in a very simple way that people were telling me, coming out to tell us that, oh, I didn't know that this humble fern has so much nutrition value. So one point here to note is to personalize posts and make it relatable. Of course, a written picture like this of me smiling without my eyes gathered a lot of interest as well, and it helps in when people are scrolling, and all of us know that humans are very visual beings. So what we do is we read with our eyes, I would say. So when we see a picture, we're like, oh, that's a funny picture. Let me click on that and see what's written. So inserting a written picture works. Also, based on demographics, so when we created the group, there were many of us who were in Malaysia, and in Malaysia, most of us, at least half of us, speak in our national language. So I went on writing in Bahasa Melayu. Of course, there are also other posts. This was written during the Chinese New Year on how shiitake mushrooms is one of the Chinese delicacies and almost a dish that Chinese must have during their reunion dinners. And I went on writing about the nutrition values of the shiitake mushroom, what is the scientific way to boil these mushrooms, and upon which temperature does the active ingredients denature. So this actually was very a hit among the Chinese society in Malaysia, and they said that many of them, in fact, wrote back to us about chatted with us in the group, saying that, oh, during my reunion dinner, I used your tips, and it did give me a more flavorful mushroom dish. So the second tips would be write about your tips. I say this is because many of us always, or at least the people around me always come up to me and say that I don't know what to write about. I'm not in the field of science communication. You don't need to be a science communicator to communicate science. Communication is our basic instinct as human being, and science is what we do as scientists. Yeah. So you put that together. Communication is what you do. Scientist is what you are. So everybody can do that as long as you're picking up on in the science field. You'll be able to communicate your science. But these are just some ways that we could help you to further boost you to creating engaging posts. So another thing was a trip we went. So this was a tin dredge, and this is the only tin dredge left in Asia. So it is in a very small area of in the city that I live in. So we went there and we went to see the remains of this tin dredge. So this tin dredge was from the year 1938, and we went on talking about the tin dredge and how much ore or how much there was able to mine in those days, and that became a story. And that also was a very good hit. And a very heartwarming comment that I got from this post is a friend of mine who was a mother said that she read this story to her child as a bedroom, as a good night or nighttime story to a child. And that actually really warmed my heart because it was such a nice thing that you're instilling the love of science with the younger children and reading about things like this to your kids. So that itself was a small win for me. And I like to celebrate small wins. And this was, it really made my day. In fact, the whole month that my post or the post that we write was able to being translated to small children. The other one was on your right, you would see a friend of mine who actually likes to plant vegetables in her home. So I got her to do a small video, and she created a video on how she sings to her plants. So she's a botanist by thought, and she finds that singing to her plants somehow kind of motivates or makes the plants grow fuller vegetables and more fresher vegetables. So she put a really nice video of her talking to her plants and singing, and also talking about these long beans that she was growing. And so the gist of this would be to write about your trips. It is very easy to say when I don't know what to write about, but you can write about what you're having for lunch on that day. If you're having rice for that day, the thing that comes to your mind is write about starch. If you're talking about if you have different types of meals or different combination of food on the day, write about how important a complete diet is to human body. And of course, inserting pictures and capture attention. Inserting pictures will definitely capture attention, and this will also help you to engage a little bit more with the audience. Right. So after all this, the next question that anyone could ask is, what does it mean for me? Why do I have to do this? And some people saying that it's a waste of time. I'm not going to science, because a lot of people sometimes say that the idea of a science communication is sometimes watering science down or watering facts down or watering the concept of even putting science facts out there. But for me, it was the ability to share my journey into the world and share the small things that I did on a daily basis while putting in or squeezing in a little bit of science facts here and there, and also watering down the science facts to be able to be absorbed or to be able to understood by the people reading it. It also gave me the opportunity to humanize my science and make a lot of new friends and a lot of new collaborations. And through these collaborations, many of times I've got invitations to review papers and also invitations to be co-supervisors from students, because I'm a biotechnologist by thought, and what I write is roughly around the field of my area of research. And when I do that, when people read, they go, oh, you're writing about this. So I have a student who's also working for some things like this. Would you mind if we have a discussion, or would you mind if you're co-supervising her? And sometimes I also get invitations to review articles and everything. So it is a win-win situation for all of us in the group, actually. Right. So today, just to end my little sharing session today, I would like to challenge all of you to write a post anywhere on any social media platform you're using. I know in certain parts of the world, Twitter is a very big thing. You can put it on Twitter. Of course, each social media platforms comes with their pros and cons. On Twitter, for example, you have a relatively smaller word count or character limit that you could use. Facebook, not so much. Instagram typically comes with an image-based or visual-based social media platform, but anything that is suitable or anything that is within your realm or your interest will be fine. But start writing. You have to start somewhere. If you don't start something, then if you don't start, then you would never know, or you would never understand the importance of doing things like this, yeah? So I'd like to challenge all of you today to write something. It even could be what you're drinking today or what you're eating today. Write something, and while you're doing that, instead of just taking a picture on Instagram or Facebook and putting it there, do a little bit of research on it. And when you do a little bit of research, you start writing about what, like for example, if you have rice for dinner or pizza for dinner, for example, you could talk about carbohydrates, you could talk about what's on top of the pizza, you could talk about like what I mentioned earlier, different food groups that you're supposed to be consuming as a human being. Yeah, and also remember that you're not in competition with anyone. Stay in your lane, do your thing. And initially, when we started off our group as well, we only had like as few as 10 followers, and there's nothing that we could do. We couldn't say that we couldn't force people to follow us, but we just kept on putting out very good quality content. Of course, when I mentioned good quality content, it has to be scientifically sound. So we do have some rules that we always adhere to, which is obviously give credit to pictures that we take, or if we're taking our own pictures, that's well and good. Also, we always reference reputable journals, and at least journals which are cited, good journals, and we do research from journals, and then we continue with our writing. And after a while, word of mouth went around, and lo and behold, we are actually at a very good follower number right now, and we do get a lot of feedback, and we do get a lot of messages and people asking us questions about what is the difference between expiring date and what's the difference between best before, or people asking us questions about batteries and what is the meaning of carbon footprints. So whenever we get questions like this, we pass it on to whoever's the expert in the group, and we get them to write posts and put a picture and explain to these people what this means. And as I mentioned earlier in the beginning, we only had as little as 10 followers, and I really actually liked our post. So of course that can be very demotivating. Then at one point, even when you know what, we're not going to do this anymore, this is just so sad. We're just wasting hours writing one post and just getting 2 likes. So you're not getting any. That's not a feel-good factor while I'm doing this. In fact, it's just a waste of time. But after a while, the momentum picked up. So it's okay that if no one likes the post, it's okay if no one shares your posts. It takes time to build an online presence. So yeah, just sharing. After doing this for a significant, close to a year, it did give me a lot of good opportunities to share about my research, to share about my love to communicate science to the world, and I just put up some of the posters that I have got, and a lot of two newspapers actually interviewed me, and actually the passion to start this group on Facebook was actually due to my passion in scrapbooking. From young, I used to cut out little science facts and stick them in the book. So I have a book which is like a decades old, and I used to use a book to write posts in my Facebook group right now. And it did bring a lot of positive, I've opened up a lot of positive avenues for me, the chance to meet a lot of people, the chance to network among science peers. So I hope that this serves as a very good motivation for you to start somewhere or start today, because there will be a part of goal at the end, because you cannot see the reward as soon as you do it today, but eventually the things will happen, and it only lead to a more better scientific online presence. Yeah, so thank you for listening. Take questions later on. Again, you could scan this code and you could find me anywhere on my socials. Thank you. Over to you, Stefan.
Right. Thank you again so much, Magaret. We'll address any questions just now. I'm now going to hand over to Lydia for our next presentation. Right.
Sorry, Lydia, you are muted.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to contribute to these ChemVoices seminars. Today I'm going to share with you a simple guide that I put together to help you as early career scientist improve your presentation skills. And most importantly, I'm trying to give you some case-specific examples, and we will go through them. So As Magaret mentioned, as a scientist or a chemist, we cannot escape the communication part of the science. We cannot escape presentations or talks either, because no matter at what stage you are in your professional career, we prepare and give presentations or talks for different kinds of purposes. To provide information to our peers or network, to teach, to report, or to promote our research, sell yourself, or our skills. So this means that we are always involved in giving presentations or talks at every level, at different types of situations, and we're all familiar with presenting. But what makes a good talk? So if I were to ask each one of you to just give a word to describe a good and a bad talk, I guess it would look something a little bit like this. But if we analyze each of these adjectives a little bit more carefully, we can see that some of them can be a little bit subjective. They depend a lot on the context, on the situation, on the person who is judging, even their mood at the time, etc. So my goal with this presentation is to give you some practical tips to help you achieve some of these good characteristics and how to avoid some of the bad ones. So the first thing that I suggest you to do when you're thinking about preparing a talk is to put yourself in your public shoes and ask yourself, what are their expectations and why are they here attending my talk? Why are they listening to me? So this will then lead us to the following key questions. The first one is, what is the goal or message that I want to communicate? And who is my public? Am I seeking to explain something? Am I searching for some feedback? Am I trying to get recruited? So once the answers to these questions are clear, these are going to enable us to figure out how to present or how to tell our story. And as a result, we will be able to define our talk structure, create the appropriate support for it, and also assure its delivery. So what I'm going to do in the first part of the talk is I'm going to introduce 3 different scenarios and demonstrate how to tailor the structure of a presentation in each specific case. So the first, we will be planning a routine presentation, one we do for a group meeting or a faculty seminar. The second one will be something that we do usually is prepare a presentation for a conference. And finally, I'm going to give you a personal example of how to prepare a talk for recruitment. So in my case, the presentation I had to prepare to achieve my current position. So let's begin with the first scenario. In this case, it's something that each one of us has a lot of experience in, and also it's the best environment for us to learn and to improve our skills. Why? Because it is here that you know who your audience is, and you have a chance to have an immediate and direct and honest feedback. The format style of these presentations can vary because each different research group or PI or supervisor has different ways to hold their meetings. So depending on what kind of group you are in, what kind of expectations your supervisor has, you can more or less get into express a little bit of creativity, try new things, but still keeping within the expected standard. But the main thing is to keep it simple and as straightforward as possible. So usually for these kinds of presentations, we're looking to present what we have been working on, ask for feedback or help with a problem that we're encountering in our research. So in my opinion, at the beginning, it's quite nice and useful to give a quick overview of your subject. This is really important when you form part of large groups where there are a lot of simultaneous and different projects going on. So this gives them an idea of what you're on about. So in this case, we can define specific questions, like for example, what is your current goal and why, to help to give a clear and easy to follow storyline for your presentation. You can also explain your strategy, how you're going to solve that problem or reach the objective, and then show what you obtain as results. You can conclude the presentation by answering the questions that you posed at the beginning, or even initiate a discussion to the group yourself by you directly posing the questions. So that was the first scenario. In the second one, I'll give you a chance to have a little look at the comic right here. So in this case, the scenario is a domestic or an international conference, okay? So our main goal here is to showcase our work or attract collaborations. And as the comic strip here shows, there are a lot of different and unpredictable, strange situations that can happen in these occasions. So you must be well prepared to adapt. And the way you can do that is to have a standard but simple format, because your public can vary greatly. And as I mentioned before, the conditions are a bit unforeseeable. You have no control over them. This is why it's quite important that you are able to adapt your slides, maybe do some slight last-minute changes, or you know that there are some slides you can skip and not have to present. And in this case, although you can try to tailor your talk as best you can, it's very difficult because it depends on who will be assisting. Like here, it depends on the times of the day when you're presenting, or the days of the week, or if you're the last presenter in the talk. So try to tailor as best as you can, make a little bit of an effort. And something very important to keep in mind is that although English is the most common language at international conferences, not all the attendees or presenters are native speakers. So the best way to have your talk well received is to keep it as simple and clear as possible. So similar to the previous case, our talk is going to have the similar structure. However, in this case, it's actually quite important to put the emphasis on key questions like what is your specific objective? Also, in case you used a very special new methodology, if it's different from what normally is done, and also explain clearly what your observations or results showed and how these contribute to the field or topic. And in this case, it's very important to adapt this structure to the level of expertise or the topic of your conference. For example, in the introduction, when you're giving an overview, you don't want to find yourself explaining the concept, for example, of what is a polymer to an audience of polymer scientists. So this is why I mentioned previously that although you cannot tailor specifically to your audience, you can try to target them as much as possible. Now, finally, for this last example, I'm going to tackle the preparation of a presentation that is aimed to either, well, it's towards a hiring or evaluation committee. This could be, for example, to obtain a fellowship, some project funding, to possibly defend your PhD, because in some countries you have to give a presentation, or when interviewing for a position. So in these cases, the structure is a lot more rigid, okay? It has to adhere to a required format or a predefined outline. You also, most of the time, you have a certain amount of time to give this talk. And you can be penalized if you go over it, so you have to take into account the time. So in this case, you really have to target your audience as much as you can. So if you have a committee evaluation panel, you usually know more or less who the people are going to be, or if not the exact people, what the roles, their roles are. So you can try to plan your talk this way. So once again, in this case, you have to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. And your main goal is that your talk has to demonstrate that you are the best fit for the position and that you understood what they need, and therefore you are tailoring to their, you are meeting their requirements. So this is the concrete example of, for example, what I went through. I am a CNRS researcher, so it's a research-only position. It's a tenured position as well, so it's quite competitive, and it involves an international recruitment process for all the fields of research. So it's a yearly call with 2 selection stages on, like I said, every field. And each field is represented by a section. And within these sections, you have a selection committee, which has around 20 or so people. So at the first stage, it's just by an application, a written application. And then from that, the first candidates are selected. And then on the second round, half of these candidates are selected to go to the interview process. So this interview process is really important because you're interviewing around 30 candidates over several days. And there is only 5 posts available, and you have 12 minutes to make an impact. Okay, so knowing this information allowed me to plan my talk and think about what message I wanted to give according to the public that I had. So I made sure to find exactly what the specific evaluation criteria was. The composition of my committee panel. This was really important because you have to take into account that in my committee there was not only chemists, you also had physics. So I had to make sure that the language used was understandable for both types of people. I had to think about what language I was going to present in, because although it's a French position, so I had to demonstrate my capacity to integrate myself into the system, but also I was not very comfortable in French at the time, so I made the choice to present in English. The time and format, like I said before, it was defined, and so I had to time exactly my speech to the 12 minutes that were required. And most importantly, I had to define exactly the kind of message I wanted to send across. So in my case, what I needed to do is I needed to present an ambitious original project, explain why and how my project and myself complemented the laboratory and the institution, and finally, how I was going to be an asset to the CNRS Institute. And all of this in 12 minutes. So this is more or less how I structured my presentation. The first part involved a short overview of my background very quickly, with the focus on why I was applying to the selected team and why at this point in time. In the project part, which was the main part of my talk, I stuck to explaining my subject of interest, what has been done in the field at several levels, giving specific examples of short, mid, and long-term objectives, and making the effort to show that I had identified the current gaps in the research and how myself and my project would be able to tackle them. And to conclude, the final slide, which was the slide that was going to stay behind me after finishing my talk, would be summarizing what I bring to the team, my fit, how I would integrate myself, and how would I contribute to the hosting lab, the institution, and also to contribute to the French research community. So it worked, I guess, because I was recruited. And since then, I have been also part of the other side. I have been part of in recruitment committees, not for the CNRS, but for lecturers or associate professor positions. And I have seen this is more or less the same. This is what is expected of the people to come to present. This is what they are evaluated on. So that concludes the first part of my talk, using key questions to create a tailored structure for a presentation, depending on the situation. And now we were going to move on to some tips on how to create the appropriate support and assure the delivery of these presentations. So support and delivery. I don't know if you are familiar with the comic strip. It's called Piled Higher and Deeper, or for short, PhD Comics. It was very popular during my PhD, so I recommend you to give it a look. So this is a little something from that comic strip, and it's a nice game to play, a funny game to play when attending a seminar or a conference. And it's full of funny or sometimes common situations that we usually encounter in these. So, is there a way to avoid any of these situations? Well, I'm happy to say that yes, if you take heed of some of the things that I mentioned in this talk, Like, for example, when we're talking about the structure, we will be able to eliminate some of these situations. If we then focus on preparing the appropriate support, this means how you prepared your slides, their format, their contents, you're going to be able to avoid maybe these situations. And finally, when we talk about delivery, I can hopefully, with this guide, help you avoid these final situations. So let's begin. For the support part, I am not going to go too much into detail because this could be a presentation on its own. And I guess most of you are familiar with the basic sins of PowerPoint presentations. For example, unreadable fonts, colors, slides that are saturated with information, etc. So I'm just going to give you a list of important things to keep in mind, like the layout, for example. In the slide, as you see, the slide that I mentioned here, okay, it's not as saturated. It has the appropriate graphs and everything, but let's analyze it a bit closely. In the layout, we look at things like, for example, is the slide tidy? So here you can see it, everything is like not quite aligned with each other, and it's not that consistent when it comes to fonts. So just by modifying this, we can make our layout a bit nicer and a bit better for our presentations. So also we have to look at, for example, the text in your slides. The text is very important that it's not for you to read out. It's just to contribute to support what you are saying. Are you using the appropriate format of the slide? For example, there are some conferences that cater for a ratio, a 4:3 ratio or 16:9. Are they in person? Are they online? Are the graphs that you use readable? Because you have to take into account that your audience has to be able to quickly understand what you're showing on the slide and also listen to you. And are the figures that you're using appropriate, or are they just there to fill a space or to look pretty? And finally, don't go crazy with animations or the laser pointer, for example, because they can distract your audience from the content. You also have to check that you're using the appropriate animations for your slides. So once you've taken care of those details, you will see, for example, the overall effect you can see. So that's the before. And if we change all these little details, you can see the difference that it makes. So what is the goal here? The main goal is to minimize any potential distractions so that the audience can focus only on what you have to say, okay? And also remember that the content of your slides should be understood at a glance because they have a very short exposure time. And so finally, the last hurdle, assuring the delivery of your talk. And this is something really important because although we are meant to communicate, it forms part of the skills that we have to develop. Public speaking is not for everyone, and some people find it easier than others. So if you feel a little bit insecure, no matter how well you are prepared, just try to remember 3 things. The first one is that you are there to engage with people, not entertain them. So the things that you can just focus on is to avoid monotonous tone or talking too quickly. To avoid talking too quickly, try to force yourself to make pauses or design your presentation in such a way that it forces you to make the pause, and make constant contact with your audience. If it's an online conference, look up to the camera or gesticulate or pick someone in the audience to look to and smile. The second one is tell your story, don't lecture them. You will connect more with the people, with your public, by demonstrating your passion or your emotions for the work that you are presenting. What you show and what you say should complement each other, and they should enhance the presentation. And lastly, and most importantly, is that practice makes perfect. No matter how many talks you've given, you can always find room for improvement. There's like a lot of resources available nowadays, but most importantly, don't hesitate to ask for advice or feedback from your peers So just remember, even though there is a lot of information available, you have to first take it all in and then also decide what is most adapted to you. And as a scientist, employ your risk management strategies. Plan ahead, identify what your weaknesses are when you are presenting or as a presenter, and then help yourself by placing safety nets where needed. And well, you have to keep in mind that there is anyway always a chance that something is going to go wrong. But hopefully, by taking advantage of what I said in this short guide, it will help you prepare to tackle some or maybe most of the problems that arise. And so here is a list of some very useful sites that I use to prepare this talk, and I also use it for myself or to share with some PhD students here in our lab. They're concerning, for example, the layout. There is a very good one here. It's a video by David Scholl who shows live what it is to give a bad presentation. So it's a very amusing one. I recommend it a lot. And just recently, when I was preparing this talk, I saw this other one. It's a presentation given by Christine Lee, where she has a whole section on chemistry, on what not to do when you are using chemical reactions or presenting chemistry schemes. So with this slide, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that it proved useful to you. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Lydia, for such an informative talk. We'll now hand over to Stephen, who will just lead a short panel discussion.
Thank you, everyone, and especially to the two speakers who have made their presentation. Apologies to everyone very quickly for the poor audio quality from, I guess, the first speaker. I think it's due to the internet connection. Our sincere apologies for that, because we are already lagging behind in terms of the time. I would like us to just quickly answer two questions that we received even before the webinar. The very first thing I would like us to discuss is, can science communication actually increase the impact of one's research? And I would like to reframe the question like this: has science communication actually increased the impact of your research? Shall we possibly start from the first speaker and then to the second?
Yes, hi Stephen. Thank you for that question. So the answer is yes. As I mentioned in my sharing session earlier, I've received a lot of comments pertaining to a post in the group, and researchers coming up to initiate collaborations on what I've written, and then possibly asking me questions on research discussions and research collaborations between universities, even to supervise postgraduate students. So indeed, it has given a very positive research impact in terms of also invitations for talks and sharing, and also widen my coverage, and widen my network to get to know even more scientists. Thank you.
Thank you, Magaret, for that wonderful contribution. And over to you, Lydia.
Yeah, I think, thank you. It's a vital skill because it's on various different levels. For example, in research, when you're involved, we're more involved in multidisciplinary research. So it means that as a chemist, you're working with physicists, you're working with material scientists, you're working with geologists. So if you are unable to communicate, the science doesn't move on. So in research, it's very important when you're communicating to your peers, to people who are not in your field, and also to extend to non-scientists as well. If we cannot stay separate. We cannot stay on our little like ivory tower and think that what we're doing is for the good of everyone. No, you have to show the results to the public as well. So it's very important to know how to communicate your science.
Thank you so much for that. And then the second question, very quickly, because of our time. I, as a person, don't really consider myself yet a science communicator, but it's something I'm still learning about. And I guess many, of our attendees and even more people within the younger chemists community, I would like us to sort of share some insight on how to gain more confidence as a person who is just sort of starting out as a science communicator. Will Lydia start first, and then we move to Magaret?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think as Magaret mentioned in her talk, we are scientists and we communicate, no matter if it's by talking or writing grants or writing publications. So it forms a part of who we are. We are already science communicators. So the only way to get better, to develop our skills, is to practice them. You can start on a smaller, more personal scale, like sharing, like Magaret mentioned, sharing personal posts on your personal social networks. And then once you get more and more confident, you can start doing it within your own lab or maybe to other people. But always the sum of little steps. When you look back, you've advanced a long way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Over to you, Magaret.
Just adding on to what Lydia wonderfully said, it's actually the baby steps, and the baby steps can be a very difficult and very gruesome and scary process. In fact, and I remember the comments that I've got initially when I started my group. People were saying that you're dumbing science, or you're watering down science, and this is not what a scientist should be doing. But then I look for tend to leverage on the positive side of comments that I've got, like the young lady who told me that she reads my post to her little kid as a bedtime story, or people who said that, oh, I understand what a peanut allergy is all about. So baby steps, and try to harness or try to garner on the more positive side of the message that you get.
Thank you, both Magaret and Lydia, for the wonderful insight you've shared with us on the two questions. And very quickly, before we finish, I would like to advertise our forthcoming program, which will be in May, and it will be about the subject of leadership and your career. The exact time and other information will be communicated to us very soon. Just be on the lookout for more information about the next webinar. And that's it for today. I appreciate our speakers, Dr. Magaret and Dr. Lydia, for their availability, and also our attendees. We'll definitely catch you in the next one. Stay tuned and stay safe. Bye for now. Bye.